Good afternoon, everyone, from East Africa, where 5x more people are displaced by massive floods, all the way through the Sahel to the western coast of Africa, Mauritania, massive floods. The trend shown here, perhaps it's a repeat in time because the greatest kingdoms of the time, Ghana, in the same exact areas. Ruins you're not seeing, Tichit and Kombi Saleh, cross-continental trade routes, reconstruction maps of the mega lakes, seem to be full. You can't have this vast empire without plentiful water resources. Rivers as well flowing with estuaries in these areas. Vibration and frequency left in the walls. And perhaps these are not horns, but portable, wireless power devices. Because the bird's eye view appears a massive flood swept east to west. And the distinct line where all of these World Heritage sites are looks like a continental shelf. The sand ripples we see on the beaches are the same, but on a continental scale. And we look at the continental shelf at the arrows, and we see the same thing in the deserts. Manipulated timelines of human history right in front of us. In this day and age, it's so important to keep your body functioning at optimal performance. And collagen may be the closest thing we get to a real fountain of youth. After all, collagen is the most abundant protein in your body and essentially the glue that holds it all together. When you're middle-aged, you're only producing half of the collagen that you did in your youth. My focus is about digestive health because the change in our diets from foods being unavailable, moving to seasonal availability of foods, and the entire spectrum of availability of foods changing. There's so much more to talk about with the benefits of collagen. You can visit healthwithadapt2030.com to learn more. The link's in the description box below. Our Earth at the moment is in a transition into this grand solar minimum. Now, as it continues, winters are going to last longer into spring, and then as we've seen already, early onset of cold, blizzards, snow, and record cold are going to shrink the growth seasons and stunt plant growth, meaning the amount of time we have to grow food in the northern hemisphere is going to continue to shrink. And also with that, we're going to start to see massive shifts in precipitation as cloud cells and jet streams move into different places. And I've been focusing on Africa because this is where we can, as a world, get a double crop out of that area, and the superpowers know it. This is becoming wetter, and we look no further than East Africa, and we see that it's nearly a 5x increase over 2016, the amount of people displaced by floods alone. I've done so many reports on this. Even the new Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia, the largest in Africa, is in this same area. How did the constructors know that there would be enough water to fill it? But if we move all the way across the Sahel over to West Africa, Mauritania, Mali, Ghana, Togo, Benin, we start to see there's a trend happening where flood zones are now very pronounced. The darkest of blue is where you're looking on this, and the transition points where it's lighter blue from white. These are the beginning earmarks of where you could outline where it's going to become wetter in these areas. Now, since Africa once before had mega lakes, and we can clearly see them, ancient lakes of the Sahara, rivers, estuaries, lakes were plentiful, giving rise to great kingdoms across what's now desert. But how fast did that really switch from some of the greatest kingdoms in human civilization into complete ruin? Maybe the timeline's off, but the floods are returning again. Mauritania, yet another set. I encourage you to go to Flood List and look at the amount of floods in Africa alone. So when we come down to the southeast of Mauritania, we start to see that the precipitation increases also are following. The floods are more pronounced, exactly where it's flooding year after year after year, but this is the precipitation increases. Again, it's following that same trend through the Sahel. And if there was modern agriculture put in place, this could be a double rotation crop for grain production, making this some of the most valuable real estate on the planet. But that's now. We're going to come back to the kingdom of Ghana. Now, classical historians will put it from the 9th to the 13th century. Okay, this stretched across Africa, the most vast, wealthy kingdom to ever rise in the Sahel area. Timbuktu, Kombi Saleh. Yet we're told that the Sahara had dried out since what, 3,000 years ago that it's been pure sand? Impossible. Because this is not Egypt that we're looking at here. This is a city called Tichit. It's in southern Mauritania, also part of the Ghana Empire. And there are some renditions of what these cities used to look like. Here's one of them. Gives you an idea of just how vast the scope would need to be. And notice how it's very geometrical, and we have been told that that geometric street shape didn't come in until many centuries afterward. Now, how is this? And so far, only about 30% of this entire city has been excavated. Numerous complexes, buildings, city walls, water. Wait a second, where'd the water come from? I was told it's been dry for 3,000 years. Which gives credence to water erosion on the Sphinx, because perhaps these timelines we're giving in terms of human history are far off. Not by centuries, but by millennia. Because I was able to come across this map here that shows what are currently dry lake beds in the Sahel. And apparently these had water as late as 1600. So I zoomed in on Mauritania, and you can see the massive amount of lakes. Now, where we're looking is the bottom southeast quadrant there in Ulata, right where it says Sahel. So these lakes, and you'll see that ridge right there in the middle. Ulata is another World Heritage Site. And as we march through some of these areas, Tichit, Odane, Ulata, look at these mega lakes here, the ancient lakes of the Sahara. So now we have triple confirmation that there was vast amounts of water far, far later than was ever told to us in the history books of modern academia. They understood the principles of vibration and frequency. Guaranteed. It's in the walls. It's in the artwork. They were trying to convey the message. It's in the modern currency as well. And if you want to walk around the ancient city of Ulata, this is what you're going to find. Disrepair now, but once an ancient kingdom of vast proportions. And when I say vast, that is an understatement. The Empire of Ghana controlled the trade routes all the way over to Ethiopia. And they even show the vastness of the far reaches where Timbuktu is around that circular area, which is interesting because the Rakat structure was also in a circle. They're even showing a city grid the way it was laid out through several countries in Africa here. But come into the center of Africa, and you'll start to see the same mega lake. Now, these are dry at the moment. So the renditions we're looking at, anywhere that you'd see the depressions in there, square in the middle of the map is a mega lake. But if you look across the periphery, look how much water there really was. I'm sure some of it was refilled from the Nubian aquifer from beneath, but the amount of rainfall was vast, as plentiful as it would be in any other continent. And these stories about the kingdom of Ghana using vibration for an energy source is astounding, because I found this rendition, and what do we see the quote-unquote royal bearers holding in their hands? Historians would tell you it's trumpets, but perhaps it was a portable wireless tower system. This would explain their rise to greatness. And here we're told that people were existing in sand. Not possible. And Kombi Saleh was the greatest city in Western Africa. In the early excavations in 1914, I wonder what was taken out of there. Because if it was the greatest city of all time in Africa, these remnants are left? Really? It had to have been a massive cataclysm to take out such a place. Because you could think of greatest cities today: Shanghai, New York, Buenos Aires, London. Even after 600 years, there would be massive amounts of structures left, not completely wiped clean, until you take a look at what appears to be water rushing from East Africa over to West Africa. And the arrow, right where it says "My Trip," that is Kombi Saleh. Perhaps it was a massive uplift of the Earth's crust at some point there. And if you just zoom right down in on this, I left all the links below so you can go right to the trips here and take a look at the area's World Heritage Sites. You start to see vast estuaries, river canals, and a huge waterway system in these same areas where these cities were. Now, 500 years ago, there was supposedly no water, so you couldn't come to this greatness of a couple 100,000 people living in a city. But you could if these lakes were full. Timelines are way off. Castles and fortresses, 1800s. Really? How can they have castles and fortresses? Arrow marks. Oh, they're next to a river. I thought there was no water in this area for thousands of years. Yet they're setting up on riverbeds, river basins. And another thing you'll notice that these World Heritage sites from ancient Kosur, 11th century, which is around 1200 AD, and that includes that entire region, seem to be along what looks like an ancient continental shelf. And when I look at this, I say, well, that definitely looks like a continental shelf, because if you'll notice, this is off of Tasmania. The two arrows where it shows the indentation where water was rolling off. So if you think about a massive flood coming over the desert, that would have turned into massive waterfalls some thousands of feet tall. And the water erosion really would have ripped away there at the crust with all the debris coming through. And when you start to take a look at it at a much larger scale like this, when you zoom in, this is exactly what you see in those deserts. And all those World Heritage sites are right along this line, above the water line. So I'm wondering if it was an ancient coastline and our timelines are off. Because when you and I would go to the beach today, this is what we see, those ripples in the sand along the shoreline. But when you wide out, you see the exact same ripples from water left over. But these ripples here, 75 to 150 miles long. What kind of water would it take to create that? And you'll see why, if there was a massive amount of water rushing over, it looks like the sand was even funneled down into that same area. It seems as it poured off over. Now, if there was crustal displacement or an uplift, that would make sense. Water would be funneled into an area just like a river, and it would pour off. And when you look around the area, you keep seeing these striated sand deposits which were left by water. What kind of water would it take to do that? You have to ask yourself. Case in point, we're going to dive right down into it. Granular. Odane. Do you think they chose that spot just by accident, that it's right on what appears to be an ancient continental shelf? Zoom in a little bit here, and that appears to be where water was rushing over. And we see the same thing when we look off the continental shelf of the United States. This is in the Baltimore Canyon area. It looks like water was rushing off the continental shelf as the ocean emptied out into a different place for X amount of time, whatever it would be. In Ulata, where did they put their city? Right out on, if it was full, that would be an isthmus going out into the water. Hard bedrock. And that little circle you see there, that is actual water from today that's filling in there in a deposit basin. But if you go further north, you find the Eye of Africa. The Rakat structure is north of all these areas. Now, what are the chances of that? Because these messages of vibration and frequency and understanding on how to draw power from the air and how to refine metals was left through us through iconography and luckily the art of the time. Because even when we look at the currency today, you can see vibrational patterns. All you have to do is flip it, bring it into form there. And you have to wonder if the dots are some sort of resonance chamber, because you start to see the same thing again and again across all the ancient cultures of our world of these same vibrational patterns. And you have to ask yourself, why would we be purposely misled on timelines of when cultures flourished, when deserts were green, and how fast these changes can sweep through our planet? This grand solar minimum's here. It's intensifying. Powers that be know where these changes are occurring and positioning geopolitically where the food will be grown. And whoever controls this grow zone of 13,800,000 square kilometers of double crop rotation is going to dominate the 21st century. The changes are already starting. From here, it's about the build out of the infrastructure and getting modern agribiz in there. Because as food becomes the most valuable resource on our planet, these are going to become the most wealthy countries on our planet. And that's why I'm always talking about growing your own food and living a more self-sufficient lifestyle. Homestead 2030, right here on Patreon/Adapt2030. I do thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. I encourage you to chase down all the links, look at the maps, do your own research, and find out how skewed the timeline is for human civilization on this planet.